Hello, everyone. This is part two from when I was locked up as a youth. Um, I left off where I had just gotten into that fight with the guy in the gymnasium when I first got into Lincoln Hall, the youth facility, Lincoln Hall, upstate New York. Um, right after that, I made it through that weekend, and then all the regular kids came back. A week later, I get into a fight in the gym from another black kid who, I don't know, I just decided he wanted to pick on me. Um, the reason for this was he was tall. He was an African guy. You know, he was from Africa. You could tell, like, he wasn't from here. And he got caught up in the system and, whatever. But he was real tall. But he wasn't that good at basketball. And I kept making layups on him. And we wound up in a fight outside the gym. And he couldn't fight. And I punched him a bunch of times. And he lost the fight. We wound up getting caught. And we both got, tickets. You get written up when you get caught doing something that's against the rules in the DFY facility. So I'm already off to a bad start. I got caught fighting. Had 2 fights since I've been there. So I go back in the gym. I play more basketball. This was like the same year that the first pair of Air Jordans came out. This is the same year, all right? The ones that look kind of like Court Force, high top Court Force, like high top Air Force ones. They kind of look like. Anyway, I go to get a drink of water, and somebody taps me on the shoulder as I'm bent down drinking water. And I turned around, and he punched me in my nose and broke my nose, and he did it in front of everybody, and they winded up ripping up my ticket and punishing him, and I'm walking around with a broken nose now, two black eyes. So I don't know, I couldn't make it through the month without getting in trouble again, and I wound up losing my home visits. And this was when my mother was sick in the hospital still. At this point, she was in a hospital bed on Roosevelt Island, Kohler Memorial Hospital. It's like a hospice hospital. I lost my home visit, so they gave me a special visit and took me down to see my mother. And she was on the first floor of the hospital. So the people that I was with, I told them, I was like, yo, she was in an AIDS ward. It was sad back then. You walk into an AIDS ward, and it's like each person was surrounded by like a net. Like they were encased in like a medical net, like a medical tent that you can see through. And the nurses didn't even want to touch her. When I got there, it's like I had to make the nurses go and clean up her stool because she was laying there in her own mess. It was sad, And this is like a 14-year-old kid, experiencing this. So, but I gathered up my tears. I asked the guy who was with me. I said, "Yo, listen, man, can you give me some time alone with my mother? Can you just, leave this room?" And he left. He walked outside the room, it was like a dormitory type room, filled with AIDS patients. And kissed my mom on the forehead, and I hopped out the window. There was a window right next to it. I opened the window and I hopped out the window, and I knew Roosevelt Island. I had already stolen motorcycles and sold them to people that I knew on Roosevelt Island, and I just I got away from the guy. I left. It was real easy. I actually just went to a friend of mine's house on Roosevelt Island, chilled out there for a little while, and then after that, took the tram right back to Manhattan. It was a funny, yeah. I hopped out the first floor of a hospital window just to leave it's called going AWOL when you're in a youth facility, absent without official leave. So I went AWOL, and I was staying at the original apartment. I came home. My father let me. He didn't really say nothing. What's he gonna? He just understood, that I didn't want to be in the situation I was in, and that was when, like a couple months later, I turned 15. I was still on AWOL. I stole a motorcycle. It was like a week or two after my birthday. Actually, a week or two after my birthday, my mom died. My father, I knew because I was coming down from my apartment, and my father came home crying, and I knew, And a week later, I stole a motorcycle. Still hanging out with my friends, trying to live life, not let all this, chaos in my life bother me. And I hit the back of a taxi cab doing 85 miles an hour while being chased by the police. And that's how I got caught up, in more trouble. I hit the back of a taxi cab on 76th Street and 1st Avenue. I flew up one block. The cab was going about 30 when I hit it, and I was doing 85. So he went like a block. I flew over the street lamp and landed on the hood of the taxi cab, the engine part, and I bounced off the hood onto the floor. But mid-air, I was flying through the air, the helmet flew off. And when I landed on the hood, I bounced right off of it and then onto the pavement. It was funny, I was... I had some gray shorts on, cut-off jeans. That's what people used to wear in the 80s, cut-off jeans. You didn't have money for shorts, just cut off your jeans. But I wrote all over it with like a red marker. So people, they cut, when the paramedics came, scooped me up and put me on a stretcher, there was my shorts all cut up and ripped, on the floor with red marker all over them. And people thought I ripped my balls off on the tank, but that wasn't the case. When I hit that taxi cab, I blacked out. The last thing I remember was revving the bike, looking down, seeing I was doing about 85, looked up, and then black. And then the next thing I know, I open my eyes, and I'm staring up at my father as I'm being put into an ambulance, because I crashed a block away from my house when I was living back then. I blacked out again, and then I woke up in the hospital, and I was in an ICU, and I opened my eyes. I moved a little bit, and I had scabs on both of my shoulders, back here. So, But the first thing I did when I moved, I didn't touch my shoulders. I reached down to touch my balls. I just wanted to make sure everything was downstairs was okay with my junk. So then I touched my shoulders, then I touched my head, and then right here, there was literally a knot like that, about that thick. It felt like somebody cut a grapefruit in half and stuck it under my skin. It was on my head. So it was that's how big of a bump I had on my head. I had a fractured wrist, I had an air splint, a hairline fracture in my wrist, a hairline fracture in my ankle. I had 2 air splints on. They were minor, And, but I wasn't cuffed, They left me uncuffed for some reason or another. So they took me to the hospital, right? And I'm in the hospital. I wake up 3 days later. The nurse comes to me and says, "The police are downstairs. They're here to come and pick you up." I said, "Really?" I was in New York hospital, so I knew the hospital like the back of my hand from going to visit my mother there the previous year. I used to run around all over the hospital and check out the hospital. We used to play tag. We'd run through the hospital, from downtown to uptown. But that's another story. We'd wind up in the hospital, but I knew the hospital, so I got up, I put on a gown, my shoes, and I walked out of the hospital. And I wound up at my friend Mark's house, Kid One, and then he helped me get down to RD's house, and I got a change of clothes, and then from there, I called my father. My father came and got me, and we met with one of my cousins, one of my aunt's children, and we went from there to Maine to my mother's burial. And then from there, I got taken back to Lincoln Hall. I agreed to go back to Lincoln Hall. So I went back to Lincoln Hall. They put me in a lockup cottage there because I went AWOL, and plus I had an open case now again. And they shipped me downstate, and from Lincoln Hall, I went to Spofford again. And I stayed in Spofford for a couple of weeks. They let me go back into for some reason, I guess the judge took pity on me because of my whole situation with my mother and everything. They put me back into an open set facility, group home. So I went to Pius 12 in Brooklyn, another group home place. I stayed there for a few months while my court case proceedings went through. All in all, I got the judge to put everything together, and I got 1 year. But I'd already done 6 months through the whatever it was, through the other part of being locked up in youth facilities, DFY facilities. And I winded up getting sent to a place called Berkshire Industrial Farms. And that place actually helped. It's an open set facility, but it's way up in the mountains. You can't it's not like you can run away from there anyway. It was in between these huge mountains that there's pockets of places up in upstate New York where people who've been upstate know they're situated in places where it snows real heavily, and all the surrounding areas around that area don't. They don't even get snow, they don't even get rain or nothing like that during the winter. It's weird. We'll get 5 feet of snow, but yet 2 towns over, there's not a speck of snow on the street. So that's what type of facility they sent me to. And it's weird. There was a blizzard on October 3rd. I got up there, it was in September. Right? Late September. October 3rd, I wake up and there's 5 feet of snow outside. I'm like, what? So that was kind of crazy. At that place, I was lucky. I didn't get in any fights there. I winded up going, home on home visits and stuff like that. And I made it out of there in a year, luckily, without getting into any fights. And but I could have went to any number of places where it could have got worse. I would have had to do something else. It would have made me stay longer. So, it's. I look back at it, and it's really. I'm not gonna say I wish I could have done something different, but I mean, for the circumstances, I could have made better choices. But how's a kid supposed to act? When their parents they're losing their parents at that age. Kind of makes me think about how now in the present they're trying to pump in all these different new ideas to really young children, and yet I was only 14 at the time, and that's how messed up my head got at that point. You know what I mean? Can you imagine a first grader or second grader being taught all kinds of weird shit? All kinds of weird stuff they teach now in schools now. I don't know, it's sad to me, it's really sad. But if you could take away anything from my story, like, if you have kids, or if you are a kid and you're watching this, like, tell them a little bit about what I went through, and what they could look forward to if they go down certain paths. Like, I hope you can take away something from it. I'm getting all choked up about this, man. It's really it's a sorrowing tale, you know. But thanks for listening. I'll have another story for you soon. I got some more stories of me being incarcerated, or people that I know that have been incarcerated with, or different things that happened while I was in there. If you have any questions, send me questions in the comments about anything that you can think of about if you were interested in what goes on when you're behind a prison wall, or a jail wall, or a DFY facility wall. All right. Like, subscribe. Hope to hear from you soon. Thank you. Have a good day, guys.